Well, it's not the first time the Ditch has published politically embarrassing stories about Minister Collins. In February, it reported that he had submitted incorrect information on a planning application for a house in 2001 before he became an elected representative. In an interview last month on The Tonight Show on Virgin Media Television, Mr Collins repeatedly refused to say if he had given incorrect information on his planning form.
If you were living in Dooradoyle at the time, why did you put Patrickswell as your address?
Because that was my home address. That was
not where you were living?
That was where I came from. I'm not going to go into my personal living circumstances, Claire. I think that...
Why not?
Is that because that's my personal living circumstances?
But I'm asking that because it's actually on a planning application, which for some reason, if it doesn't matter, then why wasn't the correct address written?
I'm giving you the answer that I'm prepared to give, that I qualified under the planning. I clearly qualified under the planning criteria at the time.
Well, Minister Collins is expected to give another Dáil statement on this latest controversy this week. Well, for more on this, we're joined now by Paul Murphy, People Before Profit TD, and thank you very much, Paul, for coming into us this evening. Incidentally, we did ask Minister Niall Collins to join us this evening. He wasn't available. Neither was a representative from Fianna Fáil. You and others in opposition are calling for Minister Niall Collins to come into the Dáil and take questions. What questions do you believe he has to answer?
I think there's one important question, really, which is, did he know at the time when he participated in the decision of the Electoral Area Committee to put the land up for sale, didn't recuse himself, etc., did he know that his wife had expressed an interest in buying land? That's really the only question we need to know. I mean, I think everybody can guess what the likely answer to that is. It's very hard to believe that he didn't know. Because if he did know, that's it. In my opinion, it's absolutely open and shut in terms of the Local Government Act, in terms of the Code of Conduct, that in any circumstances where a connected person, which includes a spouse, has a beneficial or pecuniary interest, which in my opinion clearly includes this circumstance, then they have to recuse themselves, they have to announce their conflict of interest, and they recuse themselves. And he from the minutes, very clearly didn't.
Now, you know that in his statement today, he says, or yesterday, he says he didn't have a pecuniary or beneficial interest. And legally, you can't have a pecuniary or beneficial interest in a property that you don't own.
No. He had an interest in the matter at hand, the matter of whether the land would be put up for sale or not. His wife had an interest. A pecuniary interest is the fact that someone has a reasonable expectation to make a gain or a loss as a consequence of something. His wife was interested in buying the land, not for nothing, because she wanted to make a gain from it. So if he was aware, and I presume that he was, and he has never denied that he was aware, if he was aware that his wife expressed interest in the land, well, then he knew there was material interest. And to be clear, again, the Code of Conduct is very clear. It's about conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest. This is important because councillors are meant to act in the public interest. And yet here we have certainly the impression of someone acting not in the public interest, but in the private interest of his spouse.
Well, what the three leaders of the coalition parties have said today is that he should have recused himself. Leo Varadkar saying it would have been best practice if he had recused himself. So if he goes into the Dáil this week, Minister Niall Collins, and says, I should have recused myself from that meeting in 2007, I'm sorry I didn't, is that enough?
No. No, because he's clearly in breach of what he should have done. And this stuff actually matters. He should not have been participating in it. Now, because he's caught, 14 years later, saying sorry is not good enough. It's not tenable. If he knew, and I believe he did,
well, hold on a second. Let's just be clear on exactly what we're talking about here. What he did was he was in a meeting with 6 other people at which it was agreed that land would be put up for sale. All the other 6 councillors also agreed to that. So even if he had voted against it, it wouldn't have mattered. The land would have been put up for sale. And that's all he agreed to. The land was then put on the open market. Eamon Ryan making the point today that anyone could have bidden it. Anyone could have bought that land. Now, as it happens, Emer O'Connor, Niall Collins' wife, was successful in buying that property, but anyone could have bought it.
But what is important is not how the vote went and whether his vote would have made a difference. What is important is that it should have been on the public record so that people could see. Instead, you have a situation here where his wife expressed an interest in the land. Council management tell the councillors, according to the minutes, that there were a number of expressions of interest, but the Ditch says they have information, they have FOIs to show there was only that one request.
And that was all that was disclosed in the FOI to the Ditch, but we don't know that there weren't other expressions of interest at this point.
But then he doesn't disclose that. That is really, really important. This is grubby, dirty politics of people acting in their own self-interest rather than being declaring things.
Well, again, we don't know that he was acting in his own self-interest. All we know is that he didn't disclose that and we don't know also, as you say, that he knew that his wife had expressed an interest. So all he did was not disclose something that we don't even know he knew in the first place.
But the problem is, as things currently stand, we're going to come to the end of this week and we're not going to know anymore. Because the government, with the support of supposed independents, people like Matthew McGrath, Michael Collins, Michael Healy-Rae, voted today not to have questions and answers. So we're just going to get a statement. He'll come in, presumably, like he did a month and a half ago, Thursday afternoon, make a statement which doesn't address the central allegation, and then walk right out again.
Well,
because that's literally, he didn't address, just like in the interview you showed there with Claire Brock, he didn't address when he came to the Dáil the central allegation in the other scandal, which is that he had lied in a planning application.
Well, we did ask to speak to him this evening. We'd be very happy to speak to him on this programme at any point. I just want to ask you briefly, Paul, because you posted on social media yesterday about far-right protesters protesting outside your home. Is that the first time it happened, and is it something that upsets you?
Yes, it's the first time it happened, and yes, it is the first time that it does obviously upset me. I mean, we were getting ready to put give our baby a bath, and then you have people outside your home. I would urge people not to target people's family in that way, and not to target people's home. People should go and protest at the Dáil. You know what I mean? Appropriately, I think the vast majority of people don't agree with that kind of attempted intimidation of people's families.
All right, Paul Murphy, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Miriam.